Thank you. This is Ross Farrow. He's with the Lodi News Sentinel. He's done many articles on us. I'm trying to turn him into a conservative.
Oh, it's going to be a long time.
All right, Q&A. Any questions?
Oh, my goodness.
And feel free to ask me anything. I have no problem. Except Joe. Okay. What's your question, Joe?
I know you heard the announcement today that the administration is denying the opportunity to import oil from Canada.
Oh, are you talking about the Keystone Pipeline?
Oh, my gosh, they are doing
Of course,
that.
it's environmental reasons as usual.
Well,
That's so stupid.
Maybe the Sierra Club is a lobby group for either man or something.
This is a great example of the insanity of our energy policy in this country, the Keystone Pipeline. You put the Keystone Pipeline in, we're not going to use any more or any less energy from oil. It's just a matter of where we get it from. That's the just absolute crazy part of it. So instead of getting it from Canada, no, we're going to force Canada to go sell it to China or Asia or wherever, or port it. Instead of doing an overland pipeline, they will then take a pipeline from their tar sands all the way out to the coast, load it by tanker, to drive it down to California via tanker, and then pump it back into the country as if that's safer than an overland pipeline. It's this kind of just mindless stupidity out of the part. I'm an engineer, okay? I'm an electrical engineer, BSEE, University of Washington, 1990.
Go Huskies.
Yeah! I don't say that very loud in the startup community because they're all bears in Stanford. I don't even know what the Stanford.
I'm a UW grandma.
Okay. But the bottom line is it just drives me absolutely bonkers that you have this. So it's not environmentally better what they're doing. It's actually environmentally worse.
Yeah, that's true.
It's sending our money, more of our money, somewhere else. I mean, I'm worried about an invasion for Canada. I'm not worried about the economic threat that Canada provides. So the Keystone is a perfect example of where environmentalists, and Ross, you were asking about this, what about environmentalism? Why are you so against it? Well, I'm all for clean air and clean water. I really am. I've got kids. They care about clean air and clean water. I don't want to drink garbage stuff any more than the next guy. But we've got to be sane.
Yeah.
You can't have this insanity. You can't build a nuke plant in California. By the way, does anybody know that Jerry McNerney wrote a book?
No. Right?
You heard? Oh, okay, you're the first person that knew he wrote a book. It's a 1 millionth, I think, on Amazon's bestseller list. I bought a copy. I bought a copy, and it jumped up to 700,000.
Oh.
But actually, I'm going to say one positive thing about McNerney here. When you talk about wind energy, he complains about the environmentalists stopping his wind energy that he cares so much about. He actually talks like a conservative on this one point. Okay? Everywhere else in the rest of his book, he is the typical, stereotypical, oh my God, environmentalism and stuff like that, so we can't have nuclear power, we can't have this power, and gas power, and oil power, and all that kind of stuff. And uses the same canards that have been used by the environmental community since the days of Carter, and it is just wrong. I would love solar power to be the answer for America. I really would. But I know enough about physics and silicon, wherever my silicon ingot, and to know that it's not economically profitable. So one thing I'd like to do is I like to try to boil it down so people can understand it really easy. If you have a solar panel manufacturing plant in the United States, what do you not see outside the plant?
Solar panels.
You don't see any solar panels.
Right.
Now, if it's not profitable for a solar panel power manufacturing plant to power their plant from solar panels, then why do they expect us to? And by the way, it's 35 cents per kilowatt hour is the cost of solar power if you extrapolate all that kind of stuff. Now, even then, I'm not against it where it makes sense. Just pay for it when it makes sense. Sometimes we think, oh, we're going to build these ingots up in Norway where there's a lot of hydropower and not a lot of electricity. Hey, that makes sense. Do it. Wonderful. I'm totally agnostic when it comes to, you got to get it from here or here. I care about the return on investment. If the return on investment is good, I'm all for it. If it's not, stop talking to me. Okay? I'm just not there. Wind power makes sense in certain applications, and when you put the windmills in, you get 5 to 6 cents per kilowatt hour. It's a great deal. Problem is, the wind shuts off, so you got to build the same amount of infrastructure on the energy side as you would have to even if you didn't have wind power. Okay, that's the honest truth. Okay, Jerry McNerney gets that point, but why he has to sit there and badmouth like nuclear power? He says we don't have enough nuclear power fuel. And he repeats a lie that says we only had 8 years of total fuel in the world. And I wrote a 12-page report, and then my wife and daughter said, "John, you got to stop doing stuff like that. Nobody's going to read your 8-page report." Anyway.
The lady behind me won't ask the question. Since you're in Ricky Gill's town, could you, what is your phrase?
All right. I just wonder if you, since you're running against another Republican, can tell us the difference, issue-wise or whatever, between you and Ricky Gill.
Okay, I was avoiding that.
I'm so
No.
sorry.
That's what she tried to
But
get at.
I will. I'll address it head on because I do take all questions and I try to answer to the best of my ability. And in business,
To be a tough
no problem.
Don't apologize.
Yeah.
But in business, I also, if I don't know, I don't know, and I'm happy to say those words. But on Ricky Gill, it's this. He is a young kid. It's 24. I knew what I was doing when he was 24. I was working on nerve research equipment as an electrical engineer. And I think if you are running in a congressional district with this super high unemployment and you've never really seriously held a job, I don't think that is smart. I have vowed to myself that I will not elect anybody who, if they came into my office, could not go through my job interview. And if I look at a resume and there's nothing on it yet, I don't hire the person or I hire him for an entry-level job. Congress is not an entry-level job. Okay, let's be honest. The next thing is, he, as near as I can tell, is a nice kid, and I don't have any problem with that. The next thing is I want to see consistency on issues. I don't like when somebody says, I'm not going to talk about social issues. Well, there's a lot of things Washington can't do, and I was just talking to Ross, and fatherhood and things like that. The answers aren't in Washington. The answer to our economy is 2 steps. It's both social and cultural, of which Washington can't do a lot about. We have to do it. That's why I talk about it. We use the bully pulpit of the positions that we have to talk about. But it also has some things like Sarbanes-Oxley and energy policy we can talk about in terms of what things that could happen in Washington that would make the situation better. Without experience, you don't go to war with a general that has no experience. That is goofy. This is a battle for America. And you don't do that, start out, by taking a private and making him a general. That's ridiculous. The next thing is we already found out what privates do when they become generals in the case of President Obama.
That's for sure.
Okay? Now, Mike Obama,
Yeah.
I'm sure on a personal level he's probably a nice guy. I don't know. I never met him. But whatever the case is. So there's that. And then on the life issue, he put on his website that he's pro-life. I am pro-life. I've been on Walks for Life. Me and my wife started very early in our marriage helping out the crisis pregnancy centers up in Everett, Washington. We cleaned the cribs and high chairs and stuff like that for donations, even when we were absolutely dirt poor. Now he claims he's pro-life. I've called on him for over a month to clarify where he is on the pro-life issue because his parents made a big deal of it 20 years ago in this community when they were protested by Operation Rescue for participating in late-term abortion. Now, if he's changed, or his family has changed their views on life, that is wonderful. I worship a forgiving God. He has forgiven me for all kinds of things in my life. I am less than a perfect individual in many, many, many ways. And so I am called upon as a Christian to be highly, highly forgiving under all conditions, okay? And I look for that, so I don't bear any condemnation for whatever, but I would love to see a son of somebody who was protested by Operation Rescue. I would love to see that young man, because what a story it would be if he truly is pro-life. I mean, he could probably write a book on the subject and it would sell with that story. But on the other hand, if it's a political position just taken because we know that the Hispanic community, which is such a vital part of the voter base here, is pro-life, and it's one of the areas by which Republicans can cross over and get Hispanics to vote for us, If it's just a political position thought up by somebody that says, hey, you live in a pro-life area and I'm just going to stamp pro-life on there, then that really pisses me off, frankly.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't like that. But if it is a truly held position, then I think he needs to talk about it, because I would be highly impressed. And that would really, I would go, wow, I'm going to walk with you on a walk for life, Ricky. Come on, let's do it
This Saturday
together.
in San Francisco, see
Yeah.
me to carpool.
Okay? So if that is the truth position. So I want to see truth in positions. We don't need typical politicians that glad hand people and that earn their political science degree. I don't have a political science degree. So on the other issues, it's pretty bland. It's hard to say, where he is on much issues. I have a hard time figuring that out. I hear a lot of words. Anyway, that's my comment.
Good question, good answer.
Could we go back to the environmentalists again? Everybody's so tired of environmentalists.
Yeah, we're
Always,
tired of that.
wherever we go, it started way back up, well, who knows when, but I remember the owl, the spotted owl up in Lodi.
Yeah.
Cut down trees.
Spotted owl.
And ruled the owl's habitat. And the same way with the ferry shrimp down in the Central Valley. Putting the water on.
That is funny.
Yeah, you're exactly right on environmentalism. Yeah.
Where are they? Who are they? And why can't Congress vote them out? What is the problem?
Well, when I was a young man and going to school, there were lots and lots of environmentalism. This teaching and the education that's going on in schools. Like my daughter is extremely, well, all of my daughters are extremely bright. My youngest is probably going to be either the CEO or the president of this country. She is just phenomenal. She's the only daughter who asked me how the stock market worked when she was, about 6 or 7. It was just, she's an incredible kid. So she participates in all the science competitions for her school and school district, all right, was one of their top students. And it's really shameful because you go into the schools, and I went to the science competition, and the vast majority of the questions were of what I'm not going to call them science, I'm going to call them opinion. What's the best way to recycle this, or what's the best way to do that? And that's the tragedy of what we're talking about here. Not only is it opinion-based, but it's not teaching what real science is. How does the periodic table work? How does chemistry work? What is band gap theory? Our competitors around the world are talking like that in their schools, and we're sitting there talking about, what is the best way to recycle. Now, this doesn't mean 1 second that I can see anything on the environment with anybody. Okay? I care about the environment. But it doesn't mean I leave my brain in a closet and start to freak out about everything.
Amen.
Okay? And that's what environmentalism is.
Yep.
There are dangers in life about everything. When you get up in the morning, whether you get in your car and you drive, and we need to Pareto, what are the real dangers? We are leaving behind one of the greatest technologies in nuke power than you could possibly imagine. We could reform the United States' economy if we would embrace a technology that has been around for a long time. But because of 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Fukushima, and a few things like this, everybody freaks out. It's totally outlandish. Meanwhile, we have 4,000 young men who have given their life for this country protecting an oil patch in the Middle East. But people don't want to sit there and equate the two. 4,000 people have never died in the nuke industry. We've never shipped hundreds of billions of dollars overseas to people who hate our guts and destroy towers in the nuke industry. And I could go down industry after industry after industry where this applies. And we need to get realistic. So here's the way I talk. Because what I need to do in Washington is this. I need to teach and educate. For example, what community has one of the longest lifespans in America today? Anybody know? It is the Navajo community. I'm American Indian. My grandfather was raised on the reservation. Haida. It was the Skokomish tribe he was raised on, though. They live over 80 years on the Navajo tribe. The Navajo tribe just happens to be located downwind of all the atomic tests they did in the 50s and 60s.
Eastern Washington?
No, Navajo is in Arizona.
No, I meant where you're,
Oh, Washington, my tribe is in Washington.
Right.
The Haida tribe is off the Queen Charlotte Islands in British Columbia.
Okay.
But back then, when you were Indian, you weren't really designated so tribal.
Right.
So he got swept up and stuck on the Skycomish Indian Reservation, even though he's a different guy. But anyway, I digress. So
Thank you.
bottom line is the Navajo Indian Reservation was downwind. And they have among the longest life expectancies that you could imagine.
Oh my God.
Okay? Now, it doesn't mean radiation isn't a threat. It is. But we're not stupid about it, okay? And people that think that some little puff of radiation that might have gone off in Fukushima is somehow going to come to the West Coast and contaminate it, this is nut talk, okay? These are extremists who say these kinds of things, and they need to be called out for the extremism that they talk about. When you can sit there and do over 200 nuclear blasts in the air with uncontrolled and still have the longest life expectancy, it's not a super high threat profile. Okay? So we just need to get science back into our classrooms. We need to start talking reality instead of just going, oh my God, and they run around. But the problem is in our country, we are institutionalizing nutcase environmentalism. If you go, there's degrees you get in this stuff now.
we are.
And they're fairly profitable degrees because they're propped up by government spending. And it's sad. We're taking some of the brightest minds in our country, putting them into this field because it's economically profitable for them to do that, instead of going into how to build a better laptop. Now, here I am talking against environmentalism, but I'm not going to cede one thing. My company has one of the best MOSFETs. What is a MOSFET? A MOSFET is a power switch. And if you can design one that has lower resistance in it, you are going to have a beautiful, beautiful product that saves power. I produce hundreds of millions of these, keeping your laptops cooler, using less power, these kinds of things. I'm all for that because it makes financial sense. It's the right thing to do. Don't think our industries want to waste power. Waste is not a sign of capitalism. Waste is a sign of communism, collectivism, and statism.
Yep.
Okay?
Hey, yeah.
Yes, sorry.
You're talking about an area that I've been very interested in for the last 40 or 50 years. My major in college back before environmentalism became political. And when you mentioned Chernobyl, it makes my stomach turn because nuclear power gets blamed for Chernobyl. And actually, it was a failure of socialism.
That's right.
They built a carbon block pile there. The only one we ever built was in 1947 as an experiment up at the Tri-Cities area in Washington. And they saw that it was it had so
That's
many
right.
dangers that if there ever was a fire or meltdown, overheating problems, they didn't build one. Chernobyl, the Russians, the communists, go and build one. A huge thing. No containment building, carbon block pile. So it catches on fire and puts radioactive
That's right.
ash
That's
into
right.
everybody's life.
That's right.
It's a failure of socialism.
This is the type of people we need in office right now.
He's on the water board.
Yeah, it's that kind of it's that kind of sanity where people just go, what are the real problems, and let's go deal with them. Not just a bunch of glad-handing politicians that come up there and say, oh, I can scare people and get a bunch of votes. And that's what goes on today. Anyway, next question.
What about fighting for the money for the... I don't know how to ask it.
You know, on the subject of immigration,
Mhm.
the federal government has been polarized. They won't take any action. The states are trying to take action. And they're polarized from both sides. What are your thoughts on what you would do to try to be able to pull the two sides together and identify some real reform?
Okay, that's a great question. The big problem with immigration I see today is there's too much incentive for illegal immigration and too little incentive for legal immigration, and it's solved on both sides of the ledger. On the illegal side, you come to this country if you're generally a poor Mexican, and I begrudge no person for wanting a better life in America at all. Okay, a lot of our relatives came here. Jennifer's parents, grandparents in particular, were immigrants and came through Ellis Island and the whole wonderful story that entails. Dirt poor, went to Kansas, lived in a sod hut, those types of things. So I love it when people want to come to America because they want to see the beacon of freedom that we have here, that see the economic possibilities of this country and that things. Love, love, love it. And we want to make the legal process easy Today, my second startup was started in part by a German national. This guy had tens of thousands of dollars of bills that went out to an attorney to prove that he wasn't an illegal in this country, when the immigration office could have simply gotten in a car, drove to our company, and saw a guy who created more than 50 jobs in America over the last couple of years when that was going on, without any difficulty. Wonderful human being, came to America for the promise of America, came to America because we had a venture capital community that actually funded things back then. What a wonderful story. But he was harassed by our federal government. Okay, so we can't make the legal immigration process so hard. Back in the heydays of immigration, back when so many of the Irish and whatnot were coming over to this country, we accepted more than 3 times more immigrants into this country than we do today, legally. Okay, so I have no problem in throwing our doors open to legal immigrants. On the other hand, we've got to crack down on illegal immigration and make it tougher. But a lot of the illegal immigrants, if they could genuinely come here legally, wouldn't feel the burden to come here illegally. So once again, we've got to sit there and say, what are we doing that attracts illegal immigrants? Do less of it, like build a wall, welfare, thank you. These types of things. Do less of that. And when you're legal, make the process quick, simple, painless, and highly pro-American. Because one thing I've seen that's a little distressing to me, two trends actually. One trend is I've seen some people coming to America with their parachutes on, where if it doesn't work out, I pull the ripcord and I go home. I don't like that. I believe when you come to America, you should be part and parcel of the great American experiment, not having a parachute on. And a lot of business people now, because of the economic problems that we're seeing, we actually don't have any kind of immigration flow in the Silicon Valley anymore. In fact, you're finding quite the opposite. When people start to struggle financially, they just get on a plane, disappear back into China, back into Hong Kong and stuff like that. And we're losing a lot of engineering talent today that is going back to their home countries simply because America has turned uncompetitive economically. And I don't appreciate it if those values weren't there to begin with. I want people to appreciate what America is about, and your right to speak, your freedom of religion, these types of things that we find in our Bill of Rights. Yes?
Voter rights and how do you feel about voter rights? I mean, we get very upset that when you go to Costco, you have to show 2 forms of ID in order to become a member. When you go to the library, you got to have you got to have proof where you live, and you have to have an ID card of some type. But yet, when you go vote, you don't have to prove anything.
You vote in Spanish.
Yeah.
You balance in Spanish, but you have to speak English to be a citizen, right?
Yeah. I haven't made, those are serious issues. I haven't made those issues part of my campaign, mainly because there's so many of them to talk about.
So many.
I chose, for example, not to get involved on the redistricting side of that issue because it comes across as whiny and like we don't have as much of a chance to win in this district, which I don't believe. Our number one job is to go and educate and educate and educate. I want voters voting Republican, voting conservative, because they understand what it means to be a conservative, what it means to be a Republican. We have a great party that was founded back on a social issue, the issue of abolition, back with Abraham Lincoln. Let's never allow us a little bit before Abraham Lincoln, tiny bit, but he as our first president is what I meant. But so we can't lose sight of those types of issues. But I do want to keep the campaign focused on a few societal issues, Sarbanes-Oxley, energy policy, these types of things, and I'm going to try to keep it contained to that. But I do need the support of the Republican Party on all those other issues. But you just can't get involved in every one of their, your head will just explode about the problem. It's kind of like in the military. Some people are generals, some people got to worry about the supply lines, some people worry about, this and that and the other thing. And you can't do it all.
Fine.
Yes.
I was doing some research on other candidate, Ricky Gill, and another social issue I was wondering about is he supports domestic unions. So I was wondering what your stand is on that.
Great question. On the issue of gay marriage and domestic unions and things like that. Okay, the first thing I do when I look at a group is I don't even assume, and it's wrong with this group because I'm sure you do know what marriage is, but there's a lot of people who don't even have an understanding of what the concept of marriage is. And so I find this very often in the youth. that they don't even really know what marriage really is or what are the responsibilities. They talk about marriage rights. But before I ever talk about the right of marriage, I want to talk about what are the responsibilities in marriage.
Commitment.
Okay? How many young people know the responsibility of a father or a husband in the marriage is to be the one that meets an intruder at the front door and will go up into the point of losing his life for the family?
She took
The book.
The book.
That's what it says in the book. Okay? That says it's the responsibility of the husband to give his life for his family. In return, a mother is going to go through childbirth, which is a life-endangering process. She has that responsibility. It is the right of a child to be raised by a mother and a father, to have a mother's perspective on life and to have a father's perspective on life.
Exactly.
And so when you start to look at the social issue that is marriage, and you start to say, what is the real values here? Pretty soon the whole gay marriage thing just kind of evaporates. What are they talking about? Until I hear somebody in the gay marriage lobby talk about the rights of a child, I don't even want to have the discussion. I don't even want to talk about it. Because if we can't get what's right, I'm not going to talk about how to change it. Okay? So what I want to see is strong marriages. I want to see strong moms, strong dads, raising kids with a mother's perspective, which is totally unique. I am a father. I have 4 daughters. I can't even begin to understand what my daughters say sometimes. Okay? Anybody that thinks you can have 2 men raise a daughter, I don't even know what you're talking about. It doesn't make any sense to me. Okay? And that's firsthand experience.
But some gay men are more feminine than this women. So,
I'm not going there. Man, you got a reporter in the room and you're saying stuff like that. Jeez. Anyway.
Okay, so you guys don't understand what I'm saying.
Next issue. So bottom line is, my position is this. I don't even support a constitutional amendment for marriage, and I don't support it for different reasons. Because I don't even believe a constitution can do anything about it. It's not a government institution. Okay? If the U.S. government disappears, my marriage to Jennifer doesn't cease to exist.
Right.
Okay? So I don't care what a bunch of guys in black robes say. I don't care how many titles you give them. I don't care what snobbery they carry themselves with. It does not affect my marriage at all. They can't define it. I have never given them the right to define it. The only thing they can choose to do is recognize it. And if they choose to recognize 2 men being married or whatever, that's their own problem, not mine.
Very good, thank you. Should we talk about something else?
One last question?
One last question, yeah. Bye.
My question is this. Right now, I'm frustrated with the Republican Party. With the rhinos versus the conservatives. What's going to happen at this next election if they can't get together? We'll have Obama. What can we do about it?
Oh, mercy.
I worry, what I try to tell people is this. You just focus on what you can do as an individual, and you let the results lie in God's hands. Okay?
There you go.
I work hard as an individual. I said that the voters of CA9 needed a real choice back in September. I didn't believe the choices were valid choices. So I said, I'm going to put my name out there. I didn't go through some huge fundraising process of whatever there. I just said, I'm going to give people a choice. And I went and did what I did. You know what? That goes back to Winston Churchill. He didn't know how he was going to defeat the Nazis after Dunkirk, right? But he goes, you know what? We're going to fight these guys everywhere they are. We're not going to let up. And I assure you of victory. And he had no concept of how that was going to happen. All I'm going to tell you is I'm going to fight hard. There's so many patriots out there, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And we're going to assure you a victory, and I have no idea how that's going to happen.
Exactly.
Okay.